Hello, I'm Peter Ward and I've been working on this GPX viewer for the last few days, and I'd just like to do a little video to show you some of the latest features and sort of a partial walkthrough and tutorial, because it saves me having to write down lots of words. Just launch it here and you might see some features that you haven't seen before. You might also notice that the text doesn't describe all the features. That's just a measure of progress. Let's start by opening a file. Let's pick the Hillingdon circuit. That's not very far from where I live, and it's quite a popular little racetrack. It's small, just over a mile round, and it's mostly flat, fairly simple. So this first view is just an overview of the whole track. The orange disc there shows the start. That's where we're positioned until we move. We can zoom in and out, and as you've noticed, we can spin the model around, change the elevation up and down, and the azimuth round and round. But this view remains centered on the center point of the whole model, so it's limited use. Notice the various graphic options. The track points that make up a GPX file are just points in space. They have latitude, longitude and elevation, so they don't look very informative until you apply a road surface, and the road of course joins up the track points, but there it sits rather weirdly in space, so it makes more sense if we put some pillars underneath it to hold the road up. It looks like a roller coaster, and quite a lot of people like to have the drop downs that fill in the verticals and indicate the gradients. The blues there are downhills, there are some yellows and reds somewhere, but it's a fairly flat track. Let's just show the other views. Well, first of all, there's some statistical data about the track on the right hand side. The first person view is the view of a rider on the track. Nominally I think this is 4 meters wide. Hillingdon is wider than that. You can zoom in and out like you've got bionic eyes, and you can use the arrow keys to go forward one track point at a time, and you can go backwards, reversing on a bike being tricky. You can also use the slider to move yourself quickly around the track, and you notice the information on the right hand side reflecting the current track segment that you're looking at. So we can move around the track. We've just been through the hairpins there, we're going down the back straight, around that bend to the clubhouse, and then we go around the final bend back up to the start finish line, and indeed I can wrap around and I go back to the start. Let's take a look at the summary data if you want to. Take a look at the third person view. Zoom in on that. It's a bit like the overview in that you can rotate it and the orange disc shows where we are, but the big difference in this view is that the orange disc in the current segment remains in the middle of the screen as you move around the track, and that can be quite useful for zooming in on troublesome points of the track that if you have any problems, which we'll be showing you later. Here we are, problems. 3 kinds of problems. Let's find a track that actually has some problems. So the Lassette's one that I tried to turn into a magic road, so I know from painful experience that it does have some problems. Now we can see what they are. So it's a bit more colourful. The red showing some of the very steep ascents on a series of very tight hairpins, as you might have seen this in the Tour de France. Nice little loop. You got the hairpins, you go along a ridge, you drop down the other side on some slightly less tight hairpins, which you can't quite see on the right hand side. Okay, let's just move ourselves in the third person view up to those hairpins and see if we can show you some of the problems. Of course we can, because as soon as we start to go up those hairpins, if you look quite closely, you will start to see some fairly nasty behaviour of that orange circle. It starts to tilt. It's not a good sign, and you can see how it goes up and down, reflecting the gradient, and there's a nasty dip there. And all of those hairpins and a lot of those straights have some, what should we say, irregularities, which we want to smooth out before we make a magic road. So we go to the problem section. first thing we'll do is get rid of any segments that are 0 length, because there's no point having them. They just look a bit weird sometimes. Because we've made a change, we get the opportunity to save the file. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to go into the biggest problem section here, which is the gradient changes. And gradient changes is if I've got a slope one side of a particular track point that's very different from the slope on the other side, it gets highlighted here. So the first one there, the gradient before track point 117 is 8.58%, and the gradient afterwards is minus 11 and a bit percent. I can change the threshold that we consider to be problematic, going down to 5%, which is really not a problem, and going up to 20%, which is definitely a very sharp change of gradient. And as you can see, Lassettes has many of those. Click on the start of one, and that sets my current position. Now you can see the third person view is already positioned at that location, right there in the middle. Spin that around and you can see, sure enough, there we are at the first of those egregious bumps and dips. And you can see that entire hairpin we're coming up to has several bumps and dips, and we want to smooth it out. So if we go from where we are at 116 and move forward around the hairpin, we get to 126, 127, and yeah, that sort of looks okay from there onwards. So if we take 116 to 117, and the system is offering to replace those road sections with constant gradient, so it spreads out the rise in elevation across those road segments in proportion to their length. Let's do that. So that's gone from the error list, but we can look at where we were on the track. So we're now past where we've cleaned up, and as you can see, those bumps and dips are now gone, and that orange disc now stays nice and upright. Now I could smooth from here right up to the top. That would destroy the characteristic of Lassettes, which is that the upper hairpins tend to get steeper. So you need to do this a little bit more cautiously, one segment at a time. And let's look at the next thing we want to fix here, which is as you can see, a nasty little bump in the road coming up, which I'm sure is not there in real life. So let's get rid of that one. It starts at 128, and how far we want to go? Probably go to 133. That covers it. 128 to 133. Yes please, smooth it out. Let's just go and have a look. I think I'll make a later version of this. We'll retain our position, make it easier to do this. And as you can see, yeah, that nasty bump is gone, and you repeat the process, save the file. Technical point here, because this is running in a browser, I can only save files to the download directory on your machine, which is configured in your browser, and in my case it's called downloads. Let's go and open the downloads folder, and we'll see a couple of files in there where I've been playing, and they're all variants on Lassettes, but you can see that they're distinguished by having a timestamp afterwards, and I can load those files back into the program if you like, which is a cheap way of doing undos. Proper undos will be coming later. Let's just show you there we go, let's just prove that it loads in again. Good thing to do. And I will make some magic roads out of these just to make sure that they don't upset the magic road maker. They are fairly basic GPX files, so I don't really foresee any problems there, but I'll check it for you. And then finally go back to problems. What I don't have yet is sharp bends, but let's just show you what that's going to do. So open another local loop, Whiteleaf being a popular climb in the Hildens. See, that has a sharp bend. Zoom in on that, and there we are. So that's exactly the kind of bend that you would probably fix by using GPS prune, and I'm going to have a go and see if I can do some kind of fairly simplistic fix in here. Whether or not you want to continue to use GPS prune, entirely a matter of taste. I'm sure I will, but this is aiming for simplicity, and I hope you're enjoying it so far, and please watch out for more developments. Thanks very much.